Snow fell soft as ash over the crooked roofs of Hollow Bend, turning every sound into a hush and every cruelty sharper for it. Cassidy Miles walked barefoot through it, boots long gone, toes purple beneath the torn hem of her skirt. Her dress had once been her mother's, a faded calico thing, but now it clung damp to her thin frame, stiff with the cold. She didn't cry. Crying had dried out of her days 2 towns ago, back when her uncle traded her for a debt and said, "Some girls ain't meant for softness." The note pinned to her coat had only 4 words, "Return to sender." She passed townsfolk without looking up. A butcher's boy pointed. A woman with a fur muff tugged her child behind her. Somewhere a man laughed, cruel and quick. Cassidy didn't stop walking until she reached the edge of the mercantile porch, where a clump of slush dripped steadily off the awning. She huddled under it like a stray dog, hands tucked beneath her arms, heart thudding for more than just cold. The last time she had asked for warmth, a barkeep had offered her upstairs and grinned like he was doing her a kindness. The scent of pine smoke and horse lather drifted in from the livery. Cassidy lowered herself to the wood, eyes half-lidded against the falling white. Her ears rang with hunger. Around her, the town went on pretending it didn't see her, and she was almost content to disappear there, quietly, with her name still her own and no man's ring to cage it. Then came the sound of boots, slow, deliberate, heavy with distance walked and weight carried. Cassidy didn't look up. Most men passed. Some spit. A few offered worse. But this one paused. The air around him felt warmer somehow, even as snow swirled at her feet. She saw the shadow of him before his voice. "You hungry?" His voice was low, but not rough. It sounded like a man talking to a horse he didn't want to spook. She glanced up, wary. He was young, maybe 22, but built like a barn door, broad and unhurried. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed his face, but not his eyes. Those were the color of dark honey, and they held a kind of stillness, the way lakes hold sky. "I ain't beggin'," she said softly, voice scratchy. "I didn't say you were." He reached into his coat and pulled out a cloth-wrapped biscuit, still warm. He held it out without stepping closer. She stared at it. Hunger warred with pride. Then her hand snatched it like a cornered thing. She didn't thank him, just turned her shoulder, chewing as if someone might take it back. He didn't move. Just waited until she finished. Then he untied the scarf around his neck, wool, pine green, worn but clean, and knelt to wrap it around hers. His fingers brushed her neck, light as breath. She flinched anyway. He stood again, took a slow step back. "Name's Walker," he said. "Got a place out past the ridge. Big. Quiet. Not many come round." Cassidy said nothing. "If you need somewhere to thaw," he added. "Barn's warm. Door don't lock." Then he tipped his hat, turned, and walked off through the snow without waiting for an answer. Cassidy stayed curled on that porch until night claimed the sky and the biscuit felt like it never happened. She slept behind the mercantile under sacks of grain that didn't warm her much. By morning, her fingers were stiff and her ankles blistered. No one offered her anything but silence and suspicion. The next day, she ventured toward the chapel. The preacher saw her coming and closed the door before she reached it. He'd spoken against girls like her last Sunday, said decency didn't cover disgrace. She'd never stepped foot in that church again. The only open place was the livery stable. She brushed dung for a crust of bread and got kicked for resting too long. On the 3rd day, her body gave out near the watering trough behind the smithy. When she woke, she was under a wool blanket that wasn't hers, and hay crackled beneath her. Her back burned with soreness, but the wind wasn't biting anymore. She sat up, blinking. The barn smelled of cedar, horses, and saddle soap. A fire was going low in the corner, guarded by a cast-iron kettle. Next to her, a tin cup steamed. Walker Grayson was leaning against the far post, arms folded, watching her like you might watch a fawn after a storm. "I didn't carry you far," he said. "You walked most the way. Sort of." She reached for the cup and sipped. Broth. Salt. Heat. Her throat choked against kindness. "I ain't stayin'," she said hoarsely. "I didn't ask you to. I got no money. Didn't charge you. Folks'll talk. He shrugged. They always do. She looked down at her toes, wiggling under the blanket. I ain't no wife. Didn't say you were. Silence held between them for a beat, as thick as molasses and twice as heavy. Then he pushed off the post and left her with the kettle and the quiet. Over the next days, Cassidy stayed. Not because he asked, but because the barn was warm and he wasn't cruel. She swept, out of habit, fed the chickens, mended a frayed bridle. He never once corrected her or praised her. He just worked alongside her, silent as the snow on the roof. Sometimes, they ate at the same table. He offered her stew and cornbread without asking questions. Once, she asked why he lived alone. He only said, "Folks leave." Another time, she caught him watching her braid her hair. When their eyes met, he didn't look away, didn't leer. Just nodded, like it meant something he couldn't put words to. She didn't know how to trust that. One morning, she went into town for flour. The gossip hit her like stones. Heard the giant rancher took her in. Wonder what she pays him with. She's ruined. He's just finishing the job. The words crawled under her skin and stayed there. By the time she returned to the ranch, her hands were shaking. She threw the flour sack down and ran to the barn, hiding behind the hay bales like she had something to be ashamed of. Walker found her there after sunset. He said nothing for a long while. Then he knelt beside her and set a wrapped parcel in the straw. Inside were boots, real ones, sturdy leather, lined with fur. "Can't have you freeze," he said. "I don't want your charity." "It ain't charity. It's boots." She stared at them, at him. "I'm not broken," she whispered. "No," he said. "You're just cold." That night, she wore the boots to sleep, just to see how they felt. A week passed. Then came the man from her past. Her uncle. Red-eyed, whiskey-throated, waving a deed of debt and demanding the girl he sold be returned. Claimed she owed him. Said the law was on his side. The sheriff was uneasy. The town gathered in the square, faces flickering with curiosity, judgment, some pity, but not enough. Cassidy stood still in the falling snow, face white as the ground beneath. Her hands balled in the pockets of Walker's coat. He draped it over her shoulders before she could protest. The crowd whispered, eager for a show. Her uncle pointed. "She's mine. Ain't no one claimed her proper. I've got legal right." The sheriff hesitated, looked to Walker. Walker stepped forward. No gun. No yelling. Just presence. He walked until he stood beside Cassidy, then turned to face the crowd. His voice was steady. "She ain't yours," he said. "And she ain't alone." "She's not your wife," the uncle snarled. Walker's gaze didn't flinch. "No. But her future sons deserve a father like me." The words were quiet, but the silence after was thunder. Cassidy felt something in her chest break and mend. She didn't cry, just reached for his hand. He let her take it. The sheriff cleared his throat. "That's good enough for me." The uncle cursed and turned away, defeated not by law, but by something heavier, choice. The townsfolk didn't cheer. They didn't clap. But some lowered their heads. A few even nodded. Cassidy stood taller. Not because Walker lifted her, but because she'd stood her ground and found someone standing with her. As they walked back through the snow, Walker didn't say another word. He didn't have to. She still wore his scarf. Still held his hand. And for the first time in a long while, Cassidy didn't feel returned, broken, or sent away. She felt like maybe she'd arrived. And somewhere deep inside her, the place past pain, past shame, past silence, a small voice whispered, "Maybe he's right. Maybe my sons do deserve a father like him. And maybe, just maybe, I do too." Which city are you watching our video from? Please leave a comment. Please subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you.